It was a large effort that came together and assisted in the operations over the past day. So far, it's just that he walked away from the apartment.
People are angry. They're asking questions. Was she just a grieving mother? Or was this something else? Some say it was too soon. Others say the whole story doesn't add up. A 5-year-old jumping off a balcony? A GoFundMe before he's even buried? Tonight, we break it all down. The facts, the suspicions, and the comments that have the internet on fire. Was this just a tragedy? Or is there more to the story? Let's get into it. 5-year-olds are basically tiny tornadoes with legs. 1 minute, they're watching cartoons. The next, they're shoving crayons up their nose and blaming the dog. But disappearing, vanishing without a trace, that's not what 5-year-olds do. And yet, here we are. They say he climbed a balcony, let himself out, wandered straight into the unknown like he was called to it. No one saw him leave. No one heard him go. A toddler, who still needed help tying his shoes, managed to outmaneuver an entire household. Impressive, right? It gets better. Somehow, this little boy, who should have been watching Paw Patrol or begging for snacks, walked straight to a retention pond. In the dark. Alone. Because apparently that's normal. The story gets printed, the police nod, case closed, but the internet isn't buying it. When a child goes missing, the world flips upside down. Time slows, the air thickens, and every second stretches into eternity. Sirens blare, flashlights cut through the night, officers fan out, scanning every inch of ground. Volunteers call his name until their voices crack. A drone whirs overhead. A dive team suits up. The neighborhood holds its breath. Because they're all thinking the same thing. Please don't let it be the water. But deep down, they already know. Then a voice cuts through the static of a police radio. We've got something. The dive team moves in. The water ripples. The flashlights hit something just beneath the surface. A tiny sneaker. The moment they pull him out, time stops. No one speaks. No one breathes. Because in that instant, it's over. And yet, somehow, it's just the beginning. The report comes out fast, too fast. No signs of foul play, they say. No injuries, no struggle. Just a tragic accident. And for some, that's enough. A heartbreaking, terrible tragedy. But for others, the red flags are everywhere. A child doesn't just vanish into the night. A child doesn't just find his way to a pond and sink beneath the surface without so much as a splash. Something doesn't add up. Now, let's talk about what happened next, because this is where things go from heartbreaking to downright unsettling. While the world mourns, while neighbors are still placing candles and stuffed animals at the water's edge, a GoFundMe pops up. $20,000, just like that. And suddenly the internet doesn't just have questions, it has suspicions. Because grief is raw. Grief is messy, but grief doesn't usually come with a donate now button. Coming up, accusations fly. The internet erupts, and the case takes a turn no one saw coming. Some people cry for days. Some shut down completely. And some, apparently, fire up their laptops and start a GoFundMe. Because within hours of this child's death, before the dust had even settled, before the community had finished lighting candles at the pond, there it was. A fundraiser. A dollar amount. A button that said, "Donate now." At first, people did what people do. They gave. $20,000 pouring in from strangers who just wanted to help. But then, the question started. Because while most were grieving, others were squinting at their screens, scrolling back up and thinking, wait a second, why so fast? Why this much? And more importantly, why does something about this just not feel right? Now, if you've ever had the pleasure of visiting a viral comment section, you know it's where logic goes to die and emotions throw hands. And this case? Oh, it was a battlefield. Lisa. Too soon. Things don't add up. $20,000 for a funeral? Nope. Lisa wasn't alone. A lot of people were doing some quick math in their heads, and they weren't liking the answer. Hilario. I wouldn't be able to think clearly to set up a GoFundMe right after a tragedy. Good point, Hilario. Most parents in that situation are curled up on the floor, struggling to breathe, not typing out a GoFundMe description with proper grammar and emojis. Beth. She needs to go to jail for life. Beth came in swinging. No trial, no debate, just straight to life behind bars. And honestly, she wasn't the only one saying it. V. If you don't have life insurance on your child, shame on you. Ah, V. Here to remind us all that if you're not planning for the worst-case scenario when it comes to your toddler, you're apparently doing life wrong. Fat Cats. None of your business. People can donate to who they want. And of course, we have Fat Cats defending freedom of choice, which, fair point, but let's be real. This wasn't just about donations anymore. This was about intent. Now, the $20,000 question, literally, was whether or not this amount made sense. So, let's break it down. A standard funeral, a few $1,000s, a high-end service with all the bells and whistles, maybe $10,000 tops. So why double that? Enter our funeral director who, bless his soul, decided to chime in with some cold, hard facts. According to industry standards, a modest funeral service shouldn't cost more than $7,000. Which means this GoFundMe wasn't just for burial expenses. It was for something else. And that something else is where the suspicions exploded. Now, here's the real debate. Was this the desperate act of a grieving mother who didn't know what else to do? Or was this a calculated move? Because let's be honest, timing is everything. And when a fundraiser goes live before the official cause of death is even finalized, people start asking the hard questions. And the biggest one of all, who was actually benefiting from this money? Because what happened next? Oh, it only made things worse. Stay with me, because we're about to dive into the fallout, the accusations, and the moment this controversy turned nuclear. You ever hear a story that just doesn't sit right? You hear the details. You nod along. But deep down, something in your gut is screaming, no, this isn't the whole story. That's exactly what happened here. A 5-year-old boy is dead. The official story? A tragic accident. And yet, something is off. People want to believe this was a terrible, heartbreaking mistake. They want to believe no parent could ever. But the more you look at this case, the harder that becomes. When tragedy strikes, people grieve. They collapse. They shatter. What they don't usually do is set up a fundraiser within hours. Or act strangely. But before we even get to that, let's go back. Because this mother, she already had a history. Nothing too big, nothing you'd think twice about, at first. But there were red flags, little moments, signs of stress, signs of struggle. And people who knew her before the tragedy, some of them weren't entirely shocked when this happened. And then the internet got involved. And let's be honest, when the internet wants answers, it gets them. People scoured through her social media posts, her comments, her timeline. And they started finding things. Posts about frustration, about exhaustion, about stress. Again, not unusual. Every parent has bad days. But in the context of what happened, suddenly those posts took on a very different meaning. And then came the part that really made people's skin crawl. It wasn't just what she did before, it was how she acted after. Let's be real. If your child just died, your world should stop. You don't think about money. You don't think about what people are saying online. You barely even function. And yet, she was posting, commenting, moving like someone who had a plan. And if people were already side-eyeing her before, now, they were fully suspicious. But let's go back to the crime itself, because the story they told us, it doesn't make sense. A 5-year-old child supposedly falls from a balcony and somehow ends up in a pond. If you look at the distance between the balcony and the water, you start to ask, how? How does a child fall, get back up, and walk far enough to reach a pond without anyone noticing? And more importantly, why would he? Because here's the thing, this little boy was autistic. A lot of people assume autistic children don't understand danger, that they'll walk into traffic without a second thought, but that's not always true. Many autistic kids have strong fears of water. Some are highly aware of their surroundings. And for this particular child, people started asking, would he really have wandered off, or was he put there? Because if he was put there, that changes everything. And yet, despite all these questions, all these inconsistencies, the police came out with a single statement: no foul play suspected. And that's when the public snapped. Because at this point, people weren't just suspicious, they were angry. How can you not investigate this? How can you look at this bizarre, tragic, convenient story and just accept it? And when authorities refuse to ask questions, the public starts asking them instead. Because now, people weren't just questioning the story. They were questioning the mother herself. You ever watch a movie where someone dies, and instead of mourning, their family immediately asks about the life insurance? Cold, right? Now, imagine that, but in real life, and instead of life insurance, it's a GoFundMe page. While the public was tearing itself apart, half screaming, "Scam," and the other half shouting, "Leave this poor mother alone," a few experts were sitting back and saying, "Wait, we've seen this before. Losing a child shatters your brain. You stop eating, you stop sleeping. Time stops making sense." So, is it normal to set up a fundraiser hours after your kid dies? According to forensic psychologist Dr. Karen Whitmore, absolutely not. In cases of genuine grief, the mind prioritizes survival and emotional processing. Financial concerns typically arise later, often when external stressors force action. Translation: most parents aren't thinking about money right after their child dies. They're barely functioning. And yet, within hours of this tragedy, there was a fundraiser, professionally written, well organized, almost planned. Now, let's get darker. Because while psychologists study grief, criminal profilers, they study behavior. And sometimes, grief and greed look eerily similar. Enter profiler Daniel Reyes, who spent years analyzing people who exploit tragedy for profit. It's not uncommon for individuals with financial struggles to view personal tragedy as an opportunity, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. Which means, did this mother accidentally see a silver lining in her son's death? Or worse, did she see it before he even died? Let's step back for a second. How common are GoFundMe scams? You'd hope the answer is rare. But hope is a funny thing, because the truth, it happens all the time. According to crowdfunding ethics expert Lisa Chan, nearly 1 in 3 major GoFundMe campaigns following a tragedy are flagged for fraudulent activity. 1 in 3. Some get caught, some don't, and the ones that don't, they walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, in this case, the fundraiser asked for $20,000, but the question is, was that number chosen out of need, or because it sounded believable? So, let's settle this once and for all. Where's the line? When does a fundraiser stop being about survival and start becoming opportunistic? The experts agree on a few key signs. 1. The timing. If the fundraiser goes up immediately, before the dust even settles, red flag. 2. The wording. Does it focus more on loss or money? If it feels like a sales pitch, red flag. 3. The reaction to criticism. People mourning a loss don't get defensive about money. They don't threaten to sue critics. If they do, red flag. And guess what? In this case, we hit all three. So, what do we do with all this? Did this mother plan to profit off her child's death? Or was she just grieving in a way we don't understand? That's the question. But maybe the real question is, if she was lying, how far does that lie really go? Because what happens next is where things take a very dark turn. So, now you know everything. The tragedy, the fundraiser, the backlash, the doubts, the questions. Was this a grieving mother who made desperate choices in the midst of heartbreak? Or was this something darker? And if it was darker, how dark are we talking? Because let's be honest, money has made people do worse. Some will say, leave her alone. She just lost a child. People cope differently. Some go silent. Some seek comfort. And some start fundraisers. It doesn't mean she's a monster. Maybe she wasn't thinking straight. Maybe she thought she'd need the money for funeral costs, medical bills, anything that comes after a loss like this. And let's not pretend losing a child doesn't change everything. So, sure, we could give her the benefit of the doubt. But here's the part where things get uncomfortable. What if she wasn't just grieving? What if she was calculating? Some people see tragedy and think, I'll never recover. Others see it and think, opportunity. And let's not act like GoFundMe scams aren't real, because they are. People have faked cancer, staged robberies, invented sick children, all for sympathy and for money. So, was this just another one of those cases? A mother who saw a way out of her financial struggles at the worst possible moment. And if so, was it really just about fundraising?